All right.
Great. Hi, everybody. Megan Scrumman here.
Jeff Franklin.
We are excited to give you some updates and announcements on our return to practice guidelines. Beginning July 1st, we are allowing a return to practice for the following summer sports: bocce, cycling, golf, tennis, and triathlon. So athletes and coaches can return to practice in those sports in groups of 10 or fewer. So there can never be more than 10 people at a time. It's really, really important. There are a few guiding principles that we have going into this. The first, of course, being that the health and safety of all members of our community is the most important thing. So if at any point you as a coach, an athlete, a family member do not feel comfortable returning to practice, please do not do so. This is completely an optional thing. Also, we've put together some resources, including a COVID participation risk form that gives you information on what it means to be a high-risk individual. We are strongly recommending that individuals who are high risk, as you'll be able to see in those documents, do not return to practice until there is little to no COVID in your community. I know that's really difficult, but again, your safety is our first priority. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, who's going to go through some of the guidelines and resources that we have for you, and I'll share them.
I just want to reiterate, as the screen pops up, all coaches, everyone on this call that's paying attention, again, safety is at the forefront here. If you're not comfortable doing this, or if you're in the high risk category yourself, please don't feel like you have to. That being said, the whole point of all of this, in order for this to succeed, is communication. Communication with myself, communication with Susan, and communication with your regional managers. So if at any point after this video, after you've watched it, if you have any questions, please communicate as much as you possibly can. So Megan already discussed the guiding principles. Something we do want to note: this form is actually full of links that are constantly updated by the CDC, by the state, by the county. So we encourage you, anywhere you see a hyperlink, if you have any questions, to click on that link and go to that form. So as Megan mentioned, the size and frequency of practice, we're recommending 1 day a week. If you guys can get out more than that, that's great. But our recommendation is 1 day a week with groups of 10 or fewer at a time. So if you can try to follow that, if you have a team that's bigger than 10, try to do it in shifts if possible, or staggered start times. That would be our best recommendation for that. Pre-practice guidelines, become familiar with these documents. We're gonna be sending you guys a whole bunch of documents to review, go over, make sure you're comfortable with them. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to your regional manager. Finding a facility is also super important. Right now, every county is completely different in the state of Colorado. We will be following our guidelines as per our recommendations though. So with that being said, if you guys are having difficulty finding a facility, again, please reach out to our staff. We would love to try to get you guys going anywhere that we possibly can. We've already been making connections with specific facilities around the state, prepping for this moment, which we're really excited about. So the one thing I really wanted to mention here is it says ensure that there's a designated space to isolate ill participants. You guys don't have to make someone feel isolated by like having a roped off cone area or anything of that nature. As long as they're separated from the participants and people know that they shouldn't be near anyone, that's the most important thing to remember. Whether that's if you're in cycling, if you're sitting on your bike, you ride your bike to practice, just have that participant sit out away from anyone until they're ready to be picked up or they leave the facility. So it doesn't have to be a specific taped off area. Just know that that person is isolated for a specific reason. This is also where having a plan in place prior to your first practice is going to be huge, right? So you guys can hopefully run your practices as normal as possible while following social distance guidelines. But the biggest thing with your first practice is going to be a couple of the forms that we're going to be required for you guys to fill out. So we're going to skip down a little bit. If you look at the COVID-19 waiver and code of conduct, Megan's going to show you guys what that looks like. This is required for all participants in a practice: coaches, unified partners, athletes, assistant, anyone helping at practice that's going to be one-on-one with the athletes should fill out one of these forms to be safe. I'm not going to go through this list by list. You guys can read through it, but please note that when you go through this with everyone at the practice, they have to X each box at the top and then completely fill out the bottom and sign everything prior to you guys practicing, right? So we're going to collect all this information and I'll get to that in a second. So you'll fill that entire thing out. And then the second page of this is really great. It's a fact sheet a fact sheet of who is at high risk with COVID-19. So again, we encourage anyone who is high risk to not participate. That is completely your call. But we're encouraging that you guys stay home, stay safe, especially if you're showing any type of symptom from the COVID-19 pandemic. So that will be required to send to your regional managers before you guys practice. The second requirement moving forward, as of right now, as Megan mentioned, the only thing we're focused on is practice. Competitions are an afterthought. The only thing we want to get back to right now is practice. These sign-in sheets that she pulled up, and it's also a symptom tracker. For those of you that have been out in public, you probably noticed that most places you go to, they ask you some questions, they take your temp, and they have your contact information just in case, right? So all coaches will be required to fill this out on a weekly basis, and every week, the athlete actually has to sign this as well. So first practice, you show up, you got 15 people there, let's say, you're gonna have to fill out first name, last name, phone number, and email directly for those athletes and unified partners, right? Then you're gonna ask for you're gonna take their temperature, see if they have a fever. I don't wanna jump too far ahead, but we will be purchasing the infrared touchless thermometers that you guys can get on loan from us. You will not be able to keep them. It'll be sort of like a loan out system. We'll track who has them and who doesn't, and they'll need to be returned at the end of the season so we can help with that cost. So you'll be required to ask every single participant this at every single practice. And then you need to ask them these other three questions as well, is if they've had a cough, if they're showing other symptoms of COVID, or if they've been around anyone that's been sick, and you should record all this information to be safe. So,
and ideally the athlete and coach themselves should fill this out. If anybody needs assistance filling this out, go for it. But we will send every coach 10 pens so that you have enough per person. And the idea is that individuals fill it out themselves.
That's a great point. We just want you to get in the habit of this, because this is replacing our typical entry form and anything else we do during the season. This is going to be a new process specifically for this first step of reopening. So after you fill out this first sheet, you'll return that first sign-in sheet and your COVID-19 waiver and code of conducts to your regional manager, right? Which we'll get to in a second as well. But those are the two biggest things that you're going to need to do. After that first sign-in sheet is turned in and all of those waivers, you guys will need to fill out those sheets every time you have a practice, and then save them, and then you'll be able to submit them at the end of the season to turn in to SoCo. So you'll just resubmit those to your regional managers at the end of the year. You can snail mail them in, scan and email them, whatever is easiest for you guys. That is going to be
take a picture on your phone and text it.
Take a picture on your phone and text it, whatever is easiest. That is going to be the registration process to practice. And that's all we're concerned about right now. Again, if we get to competitions down the future, we'll discuss all of those guidelines. Right now, these are the two most important pieces of paper you need to have weekly. Okay. Can you scroll back up? Oh, real quick. Sorry, due date again, by the end of the first week of your practice. So if you're practicing on July 8th, which is I think Monday or Tuesday that week, we need to have that information by that Friday. And we'll stay in communication with you guys as well. The last note to that is if you guys do have new athletes adding throughout the season, just be sure to add them to that sign-in sheet, but I would also email your regional manager as well so they can check for paperwork. So can we scroll back up a little bit, Meg? I think. Yep. So now we're at during practice. Okay. We created some distancing signage that we're actually going to mail you guys in a PPE kit, which Megan will touch on later in this discussion. Setting up the isolation area and sanitizing equipment, right? So at or before the first practice, again, we're going to reiterate this a bunch of times. You got to sign that waiver and that code of conduct and the sign-in sheet. Use hand sanitizer or wash your hands upon arrival. The biggest thing that coaches can do is educate their teams every practice, right? Just make sure you're reaffirming what we're trying to get through by getting together in that groups of 10 people or less. So it's making sure people have sanitized their hands. Hopefully athletes are showing up in masks, leaving without masks. They don't have to wear them while they're participating if it's uncomfortable. But practicing all the good habits that we're promoting in all of these documents we're going to send you guys is super crucial. That being said, I know a question we're going to get is, where do I put signage if I'm at like a track somewhere, a cycling track, or review it before you guys start, set it on top of where your coach's bag is, or if you guys have a coach's table, it doesn't have to be physically like taped to a cone or something. Just make sure that is there. Everyone knows where it's at and everyone can see and follow those social distancing guidelines. The one big thing you do want to point out, just like with everywhere right now, if someone does say they feel ill or sick, isolate them immediately, right? So you're going to isolate them. Have them step away. If they can get away, get tested, go to the doctor right away. We'll have more info on that with the links that Megan provided later on in this discussion as well. And then lastly, we do have sport-specific best practices for all 5 sports. So recommendations that we want you guys to follow if possible. Megan did just pull this sheet up. So there's some generic all sports practices we would want you guys to follow to the best of your ability. With that, utilizing our sport-specific virtual training pages if you guys have any questions. But we have bocce, cycling, golf, tennis, and the triathlon, all just examples of what you can do to help keep your team safe throughout this process. So you guys already know what to submit to your regional managers. The participant sign-in and screening at practice is great. We do have one 1A, let's call it. Let's say Megan comes to practice and I test her and she has a temperature of 100.6. 100.4 is that threshold that someone should not practice at. Now, we realize wearing masks in the heat in Colorado, someone's temp could spike for no reason. It's happened to me and I'm still fine. You can retest after 5 minutes one time before that practice if you think it's something that's close and the athlete shows no other symptoms. So if Megan tested 100.6, she just has to sit in the isolation area for 5 minutes. You can retest her as long as her temp is below that 100.4 and shows no other symptoms. Megan is welcome to still practice. If not, she must be sent home. Okay, that's just one thing we wanted to touch on. So Megan, do you want to get into the PPE kits and all that stuff now?
Yeah, we'll go through quickly, just a quick last minute items. PPE, personal protective equipment. We have plenty of masks in our office if anybody needs a donated mask. What we will send in advance to every single person are resources, including physical distancing reminders as well. So you can see those here. In fact, I'll stop sharing. So you can see, we're gonna mail every single coach these. We're gonna mail every single coach sign-in sheet templates, as well as the risk forms, so that every coach has those on hand. In terms of PPE, again, if you need masks, please request them. We will also allow teams to use $25 to go and purchase hand sanitizer and wipes if that is easier, or if you would like SoCo to mail that to you, please let your regional manager know and we would be happy to mail those. So those 2 options, trying to make it as convenient for you as possible. Again, no matter whether you request PPE or not, SoCo will mail you the signs, the sign-in sheets, the waivers, 10 pens, as well as 2 6-foot pieces of string so that you can help utilize that to mark 6 feet of distance. So if you have any questions, we are happy to answer. All of this information would be on our website, including additional resources where you can sign up for things, and then you have our contact information. So we are open for any questions you may have. Anything else, Chuck?
I think that's it. Again, we just encourage you guys, the more educated you are from what we provide you, the more you can educate your teams. But always remember that health and safety is first. As much as we all want to be back out there, make sure everyone is comfortable doing what they want to be doing, which is getting back to sports and getting back to some sort of normalcy. So like Megan said, communication is key here. If you guys need anything from us, please do not hesitate to reach out.
Also, and we, again, to reiterate, we understand that either some athletes or coaches may be uncomfortable or unable to return. If you would like to have any help getting additional coaches or athletes on your teams, we're hoping, we know we're not offering softball this summer. So we encourage athletes who are comfortable and want to join another sport to do so. SoCo is here to help getting additional athletes placed, coaches assigned. If a family member wants to become a coach because you feel more comfortable practicing as a family unit, please know that SoCo is here as a resource and we will work to expedite that process. In the meantime, thank you so much. And we're here if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you.
Everyone, good luck.